Okay, we're up to Siman Chaf in Hilchas Tzitzis. Dinei lekichas u'mechiras talis. The halachas of buying and selling a talis. Two seifim. Says the Mechaber. Aleph. Halokeach talis. Someone who buys a talis, mutzuyeses mi'Yisrael, which has got tzitzis on already, and he buys it from a Jewish person. Oy mitagar en Yehudi, or from a non-Jewish merchant, a non-Jewish salesman. V'omesh elochem mi'Yisrael, who says that he bought it in turn from another Jewish person. Ne'emon, we believe them, they're trusted, kosher, that the tzitzis are kosher, and therefore in both those situations, when you buy it from a Jewish person or from a non-Jewish salesman, a shop owner, a merchant, who says that he bought it from another Jewish person and says that the tzitzis are kosher, they were put with the right kavonas, kosher. To kiven the tagohu, since the person is a merchant, a businessman, chazaka shelochem Yisrael, there is a chazaka, a presumption that he bought it from another Jewish person. To lo mora nafshe, he's not going to lie to jeopardize his professional integrity. But if a person buys tzitzis from a non-Jewish person who is not a professional businessman, then pasula, then they are possible. We cannot assume that they were made l'shem tzitzis. Says the Mishnah Berurah, Yisrael, afilu ein makir oso shu kosher v'ne'eman. Even if you buy it from a Jewish person who you don't know, and you don't know if he's kosher and ne'eman, he is a man of integrity, afilu hochi talin de stam Yisrael b'cheskas kosher. We can assume and rely on the chazaka that stam Yisrael have got a cheskas kashrus, ubevadai tovon ushazoran v'tolan lishmon, and we therefore can assume that he spun and wove and put the tzitzis on lishma for the reasons of for the intentions of putting on tzitzis. Im lo shehu choshad, unless there is a particular suspicion about this person. For kloli hachoshad ein b'yeridei siman kuf yutes, where it sets out the rules of when and how to be suspicious. Sif cotton base. Oy mitagar en Yehudi, or you buy the tzitzis from a non-Jewish merchant. Afilu ein muchzak liknos talisus rak muchzak liknos shar schuris. Even if that's not his line, he sells other things, but he happens to be selling this. Afilu hochi nemon. He is still believed to say that he bought them from a Jewish person and they're all kosher. De'mimotze badai, as if you find out that he's lying, bedovar echod, in one aspect, shuv lo yiminu bedovar acher. So maybe he sells other things, but if he lies in one respect, you're not going to believe him in other things, and therefore he doesn't want to put his professional integrity on the line. Yisrael ne'eman. He says he buys it from a ne'eman, a trustworthy Jew. Ein belevush demukach mizeh she'ein tzorech hatagar lo ma shekona min ne'eman. He doesn't have to actually say, I bought it from a reliable person. Dafilu mistam Yisrael. Even if he says, I bought it from a Jewish person, kosher, that would be okay. K'may b'Yisrael shekona min Yisrael, like any Jew who buys it from another Jew. And that is true, and that is implied from other achronim. And so too the Ramah holds of that. The tevas ne'emon, and the word ne'emon koya latagar shu ne'emon dibura. That word ne'emon in the Mechab, in the Ramah, is going on the tagar, i.e. that the tagar is ne'emon, is believed in his words, that he bought it from Yisrael. For Hosif HaRamah, the Ramah adds, Zeh lahoros lanu has-svara, to explain to us the svara, the logic, the dafka al dibur samchinin maminin lei. Dafka on the non-Jewish salesman's speech, we are reliant, to lo mora nafshe lo masheka, that he's not going to destroy his reputation by lying. Because in other situations, maybe he'd be less concerned about that. Daled, Sifkot and Daled, the Lemora Nafshe, Ein B'Mogan Avram Shekosav, the Dafka Gabi Talis B'Tzioseh Samchinen Al Svara Zu Umaminin Lei. It's Dafka when you buy a tzitzis, a talis, which is already made up. The tzitzis already attached to it. Mishum the ein derech nochri litlo tzitzis b'migdo, because we can assume what he's saying, that he bought it from another Jew, makes sense, because it's not the derech of a non-Jewish person to tie tzitzis on the beggar himself. Avolikno tzitzis also af mitago, but to just buy the strings from a non-Jewish salesman, that is not allowed. Shema lo hayo tzataviya v'hashazir lishmo, because maybe he just got hold of some strings which looked like tzitzis, or they were not spun or woven lishmo. V'chein posuk hataz v'derech Chaim. V'yesh mekilim b'zeh, there are those who are mekil. V'ayin ba'artz Chaim v'shuas Yaakov sheskimu dehechad de'esik hatagar hu likno tzitzis miYisrael v'limkar, and they say that when the non-Jewish merchant has his business is to buy them from Yisrael, then mutzah mitagar, then it would be okay to buy the tzitzis directly, the actual strings, from a non-Jewish person. Sif cotton hey pasula. this is going on the last word of the Mechaba in Sif Cotton Aleph, that if he buys it from a regular non-Jewish person who is not a merchant, then those tzitzis apostle, says the Mishnah Berurah in Sif Cotton Hey, Shema hu ba'atzmei also had tzitzis be'abeged, because maybe this non-Jewish person put the tzitzis on the beged. V'chol shkein to also this meno tzitzis, and kol shkein, you can't buy the actual strings. Like we said above, that's more strict. To Shema lo nitva lishma, because maybe he didn't put them on lishma. V'im kein poshet that afilu im yirtze la'atirim be'habeged l'kosher mechadosh. Even if he wants to take them off the beged and reapply them, also it would still be also. Motza talis mutzuyetzes pashuk. What if you're walking in the street and you find the beautiful talis mutzuyetzes? It's got the tzitzis on kosher. We can assume that tzitzis is kosher. For also lishlach tzitzis afilu. Im yirtze latir, afilu psukin ushazurin ali de evet kegululim im lo b'shnei chosomis. Sending tzitzis by way of a non-Jewish messenger, a non-Jewish shliach, that is not allowed unless there are shnei chosomis, there are 2 seals. Okay, let's take a look at Dirshu footnote number 1. He says an interesting thing. We say that there's a chazak of a Jew that there's a cheskas kashrus, and we assume that he spun and weaved and applied and put on the tzitzis lishma. Va'afal pi shemi'ikar din kosher adova mikol mokum. Nevertheless, says the Dirshu note number 1, hamahadrin b'mitzvah, someone who wants to do things in an upgraded, elevated way with a hidur, royu lohem leida. It's appropriate to know im nitvu chutei hatzitzis v'nishru lishmon kadin alidei Yisrael. A person who is God-fearing should obviously try and make sure that the tzitzis he got, not to rely on chazaka's assumptions, but actually know that they were done and made properly. Okay, Sif base. Let's just finish off. Says the Mechaba in Sif base, that's Siman Chof Sif base. Ein moicherin talis mutziyetzes la'ovet kechovim. You should not sell talis which has the strings properly made on to a non-Jewish person. Shema yislave em Yisrael b'derech v'yargenu. We're worried back in the day with an Ovid Kechovim of old, Shema Yislave em Yisrael b'derech v'yargenu. Maybe he'll accompany this Jewish person v'yargenu and he'll kill him. Afilu l'mashkinu l'hafkid talis mutziyetzes la'ovid Kechovim osa. Even to give it to the non-Jewish person as a pikadon or as a mashkon, as some sort of security, that is osa. Unless it's only momentarily and we're not worried about it. But the concern is that this akum, this Ovid Kechovim, will pass himself off as a Jew and he could cause damage. Says the Mishnah Berurah, even if he's a businessman and he has his reputation to look after, he's also chashud on shvichas domim and perhaps and also on gilui arayos of matters of immorality. We said in the previous sieve there is a chazak, he bought it from a Jewish person. That's if Yisrael Ovar, for whatever reason, the Yisrael sold them to him, but he shouldn't have sold them to him, like we just said in this sif. Shemi Yislave, the concern is maybe he'll accompany him and cause damage. The other concern is that of a zona, a woman of ill repute, a prostitute, or Pirish Rashi. What's the concern? The concern is that as payment for her services, you'll give her this talis, and she'll turn around and say, so if you sell this thing to an akum, maybe he'll go to the zona and she'll say that Yisrael, the Jewish person, gave them to her. And therefore kolshken, you can't sell to a nachris, to a non-Jewish woman, for this concern. But nowadays we're not worried about the fact that he might accompany you. We're not worried, they're not choshed, they're not suspect on shvichas domim nowadays. But the reason of a zona, that still applies, that is still a concern. But if he removed the tzitzis, even though the holes are still there, muta, that would be okay. Taking the tzitzis off and selling the talis to the nochri, that would be in order. Okay, ad kan siman chaf.